We just had Bill Dudley, whom you know well, we all respect, come on just this week in a Bloomberg opinion piece saying it's time for them to cut rates as early as next week, and relying in part on the so-called SOM rule about where unemployment is going. What do you think about that?
On current facts, I would not cut rates next week. I think we need to be very careful about making the move. Especially since when the Fed starts to cut rates, there will inevitably be an expectation of some cascade of rate cuts. It's certainly true that as the news has come in over the last several months, it's tended to be on the low inflation and on the soft economy side. And so markets have now adjusted to expect a rate cut in September. I had thought that that was a possibility, but not a probability. On current facts, I'd certainly regard it as a probability, both in terms of what should happen and what will happen. But I think it's the better part of prudence, particularly in so unsettled an environment where the deficit figures are coming in a very problematic way. I think it's the better part of prudence for the Fed to wait a little longer before cutting rates.
As you say, Larry, it's such an unsettled environment right now, and part of that unsettlement is what happens in November, which of these very different economic approaches we have in the White House. Give us a sense, from the Fed's point of view, do they try to take that into account, or they sort of ignore it? Ignoring it seems to be like putting your head in the sand.
I think the Fed needs to consider all the factors in the environment, whether it's the fiscal policy, whether it's business confidence. But obviously, the Fed needs to stay out of politics and not be trying to tilt in either direction. So I'd expect the Fed will be watching the markets, and the markets will be watching all the political uncertainties. And so in those ways, the political uncertainties will factor into the Fed's decision making. But certainly I don't think the Fed should be explicitly getting involved in politics. I do think that there is an underestimation in the political class generally, but a far more severe underestimation on the Republican side of the fiscal policy risks in the current moment, where the Republicans are talking all about deficit increasing measures, whether it's on the defense spending side or on the tax cutting side, with nothing really pointing towards any kind of control, and at the same time making it harder for the country to sell its debt by trashing the currency. I think they are setting up the United States for a kind of Liz Truss moment. The Democrats are not as focused in this political year on the fiscal challenge as I suspect a new administration may have to be. But at least when fires are burning, they are not throwing gasoline. And that's a very important distinction.